I want you to put yourself in a very specific place.
Okay.
I want you to imagine, just for a moment, that you are standing perfectly still in the dead center of this massive echoing space.
Right.
It's the night of June 26th, 2016. You're standing on the pitch inside MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey.
Huge stadium.
Yeah, a gargantuan concrete bowl. It holds over 80,000 people, but right now it's rapidly emptying out.
The game's over.
The game is over, and the humidity of an East Coast summer night is just hanging in the air. The massive floodlights are glaring down from the rim of the stadium, casting these, incredibly harsh, cold, blue-white cones of light across the grass.
It's a very specific kind of lighting.
Exactly. And the noise, that deafening roar of a cup final, it's fading into this low, indistinct murmur of the crowds shuffling toward the exits. And scattered all over the green turf around your feet is confetti.
Ah, right. But it's the wrong color confetti.
It is the absolute worst kind of confetti.
Right.
It doesn't belong to the home team. It doesn't belong to the team you were rooting for. It belongs to the opposition.
Yeah.
You are standing ankle deep in the physical debris of a celebration that someone else is having at your expense.
It's a very specific, suffocating kind of silence, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, the silence after a massive crowd has gone, but the air in the stadium still feels incredibly thick with the emotional residue of what just took place.
Like a phantom limb.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can almost feel the phantom vibrations of the cheering, but it's completely hollow.
It's a heavy, terrible silence. And in the middle of all this debris, amidst that hollow echo, I want you to picture a lone man.
Right.
He steps up to a makeshift media zone. He isn't holding a formal press conference. There are no PR representatives standing over his shoulder, no carefully prepared, sanitized statements resting on a wooden podium.
He's just there.
He's still in his kit. He just looks into the cameras, and with this raw, completely exhausted, almost broken voice, he delivers a sentence in Spanish that lands with the absolute terrifying finality of a slamming door. He says, "Se terminó para mí." For me, it's over.
And that's it.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because today's deep dive is entirely focused on reality where that door slams shut and it never, ever reopens.
And that is a monumental what if.
Yeah, it really is.
The core of our exploration today is based on a staggering piece of research. It's a comprehensive, incredibly detailed historical and tactical projection that models a counterfactual timeline.
An alternate universe, basically.
Right. We're looking at an alternate history of modern sports, working under the premise titled "The Night Messi Walked Away and Never Came Back."
Which immediately gives you chills if you know anything about how the story actually ended.
Oh, absolutely.
Because in our reality, we know the history. We know he eventually came back. But our mission today is to deliberately turn our backs on that reality. We're going to walk down the other path.
Precisely. What we are doing today is an immersive, step-by-step exploration of absence. We're looking at absence as an argument.
Okay, absence is an argument. I like that.
We aren't just casually recounting a few missed football matches. We are meticulously analyzing the tactical, psychological, and, the cultural domino effect of an alternate timeline where Lionel Messi never reversed his 2016 international retirement.
Right.
We're going to ask you to live inside that timeline with us, year by year, tournament by tournament, tactical shift by tactical shift, to truly understand the sheer gravity of what almost didn't happen.
And you might be listening to this right now thinking, well, okay, that sounds intense, but I'm not a massive football fan.
Sure.
I don't follow the tactical nuances of the sport. Why should I care about an alternate history of some tournaments?
And it's a valid question.
You should care. Because this isn't just a story about a guy kicking a ball. This is a profound, almost philosophical examination of how the greatest stories in human history, the legends we pass down, the narratives that define entire cultures, often hang by the thinnest, most fragile of threads.
They really do.
It's about how deeply doubt shapes our ultimate destiny. It's about how close you come, how close we all come every single day to living in a completely different reality just based on one exhausted, agonizing decision.
That is the philosophical hook of this entire thought experiment. And it starts with the language of the decision itself.
Right, the never came back part.
Yeah, when you analyze that phrase, never came back, it is explicitly designed to trigger immediate cognitive dissonance. It creates this haunting sense of finality.
It really does.
And the idea that he simply walked away is so profoundly quiet, it's deeply human, it implies a deliberate, calculated, irreversible act. When you watch the footage of that moment in New Jersey, It wasn't a temper tantrum.
No, not at all.
It wasn't a player lashing out at a referee. It was a choice born of ultimate exhaustion.
So let's set the stage for why that choice was made, because we have to understand the mechanics of the heartbreak here.
Right, the context.
This didn't happen in a vacuum. We were in the immediate aftermath of the 2016 Copa America Centenario final. The situation on the pitch was brutal. It's a penalty shootout against Chile.
A nightmare scenario.
Yeah. Messi, the greatest player in the world, steps up to take his penalty, and he skies it over the crossbar. He misses.
Yeah.
Chile scores. Chile wins the trophy. But to understand the weight of that microphone moment, you have to understand that this wasn't just one bad night at the office. This was a compounding trauma.
What's fascinating here is the sheer, undeniable arithmetic of the grief.
The arithmetic of grief. Wow.
To understand the psychology of his retirement, you have to look at the timeline leading up to that night in New Jersey. This was the third consecutive major international final that Argentina lost with him on the pitch as their captain.
3 in a row.
3 in a row. Let's trace it back. First, you have the 2014 World Cup final in Brazil. They played Germany. They battled through 113 minutes of grueling, bone-crushing, scoreless football.
Just a total grind.
Extra time. Legs are entirely, completely gone. And then Mario Götze scores for Germany. Argentina loses 1-0. Heartbreak on the absolute biggest stage imaginable.
Right, and just to pause there, the physical toll of a 120-minute football match at the elite level is incomprehensible.
Oh, it's devastating.
You are talking about players running upwards of 8 or 9 miles, sprinting, tackling, functioning in a state of severe lactic acid buildup and sheer adrenaline.
Yeah.
To do that, to get within 7 minutes of a penalty shootout for the ultimate prize, and to have it snatched away, well, it physically alters you.
It does. And then the very next year, 2015.
Right back into it.
Copa America final against Chile, played in Santiago, Chile. An incredibly hostile environment. Again, 120 minutes of grueling, scoreless, extremely physical football.
Unbelievable.
It goes to a penalty shootout. Argentina loses. Another trophy right there, slipping through their fingers. And then, exactly 1 year after that, the 2016 Copa America Centenario in the United States.
The one we just talked about.
A rematch with Chile in the final. Another 120 minutes of 0-0 football. 2 red cards in the match, making it a chaotic 10-on-10 battle of pure endurance.
Just exhausting to even think about.
Another penalty shootout, and another devastating loss. 3 finals, 3 consecutive years, 3 agonizing, drawn-out deaths on the pitch.
When you lay it out sequentially like that, it actually sounds like a cruel psychological experiment.
It does.
Imagine being subjected to that. When we talk about this counterfactual timeline, we have to visualize what it looks like inside a human mind. Picture a penalty spot, illuminated by a harsh, glaring spotlight.
Okay.
And extending backward into the dark void of the pitch are 3 ghostly, semi-transparent silhouettes of him. 2016, 2015, 2014.
Wow.
Each one fading further into the distance, but all anchored to that same exact spot of failure.
That visualization perfectly captures the psychology of the retirement. When you look at it through the lens of that compounding trauma, you realize this wasn't a PR stunt to gain sympathy.
No, it was real.
He had watched an entire generation of his teammates, guys he had played with since he was a teenager, guys like Javier Mascherano, literally bleed for the shirt only to retire from the national team without ever lifting a senior trophy.
Right.
And because of who Messi is, because he was invariably crowned the best player in the world, every single time the team failed, he absorbed the entire unfiltered weight of a nation's heartbreak.
It's all on his shoulders.
Exactly. He was the sole focal point of the expectation, which inherently meant he became the sole focal point of the devastation. The grief you saw in that New Jersey stadium was visceral and entirely real.
And we have to talk about the exhaustion, because I don't think it was just physical exhaustion, right?
Not at all.
It was that deep, bone-weary soul exhaustion, the kind where your central nervous system just tells you that you cannot subject yourself to this specific type of pain ever again.
Exactly. And this brings us to a crucial analytical point in our exploration today. When evaluating that 2016 moment, the historical record we are analyzing establishes a very firm baseline.
Which is?
The logic of quitting in that exact moment was perfectly sound.
Wait, I have to stop you and push back on that a little bit.
Go ahead.
The logic of quitting was perfectly sound. I mean, that goes against literally everything we are taught, right?
Sure it does.
We are so deeply conditioned by sports narratives, and really just cultural narratives in general, to believe that never give up is the only acceptable mindset. Quitting is universally treated as a moral failing.
Right, the whole winners never quit thing.
You see it on motivational posters in elementary schools.
Yeah.
If you were a leader, if you were the captain, you were supposed to go down with the ship no matter how many times it sinks. So how can the logic of quitting be perfectly sound for the greatest athlete on the planet?
It's a fair challenge, but let's strip away the romanticism of sports for a second and look at the raw psychology. You're talking about the never give up ethos, but that ethos assumes that continued effort will eventually yield a different result. What happens when the empirical evidence of your own life tells you otherwise?
That's a dark thought.
Look at it strictly through the lens of material fatigue in structural engineering.
Okay, I'm with you.
A steel bridge doesn't usually collapse because a single massively heavy truck drives over it. It collapses because it is subjected to a specific resonant frequency, a repeated stress load, over and over and over again until the molecular bonds of the steel literally shear apart.
Wow.
The structure fails because it physically cannot absorb the repeated cycle of tension and release.
Oh, that is a fantastic way to look at it. So it's not about lacking willpower. It's about reaching a terminal structural limit.
Exactly. Human psychology operates under similar physical laws. Think about being trapped in an emotional time loop. Imagine doing everything perfectly right. You dedicate your entire existence to a singular goal. You give your absolute all, pushing your mind, your body, your diet, your tactical understanding to the absolute bleeding edge of human capability. And you reach the absolute peak of the mountain.
Okay.
But right before you plant the flag, the ground gives way and you fall all the way back to the bottom. And then you do it again.
Oh, man.
And you fall again, and then you do it a third time. At a certain point, self-preservation has to kick in.
It has to.
How long until the most rational, logical choice for your own basic human sanity to prevent your own psychological collapse is simply to walk away?
When you frame it like that, continuing to play almost seems irrational. I mean, if I touch a live electrical wire and it shocks me, I'm an idiot if I touch it again.
Right.
He touched it 3 times. So, in our counterfactual timeline, he unplugs the wire. We are presented with this incredibly vivid scene. A locker room, deep beneath the concrete of MetLife Stadium.
So
Cinder block walls, the harsh hum of a cheap fluorescent light, and one man sitting entirely alone on a bench, still in his boots, his head buried in his hands. He makes the decision to preserve himself.
And in our real timeline, we all know what happened next. The entire Argentine football apparatus, and really the nation itself, went into an absolute unmitigated panic.
Rubble and meltdown.
The historical record shows that they mobilized instantly. Campaigns were launched overnight. The mayor of Buenos Aires unveiled a statue of him to beg him to stay.
A statue.
Traffic signs on the highways flashed the words, "No te vayas, Leo," "Don't go, Leo." Fan letters flooded in by the thousands. The entire massive, obsessive machinery of Argentine football bent its absolute collective will toward one single outcome, convincing him to reverse that decision.
But our mission today is to follow the alternate path. We are ignoring the statues and the highway signs. We are asking, what if he held firm?
So here's where our timelines diverge.
Yeah.
In this alternate reality, we imagine the weeks following the tournament. Messi flies back to his home in Castelldefels, just outside of Barcelona. He is thousands of miles away from Buenos Aires. The physical distance creates an emotional buffer. And when the phone rings, when the head of the Argentine Football Association calls, when his former teammates call, when the new manager calls to plead with him, he doesn't answer it.
He just ignores it.
He lets it ring.
You can just picture it. A quiet residential street in Catalonia at dusk, the Mediterranean breeze, a figure walking his dog down a deserted street, his hands in his pockets. The pace is unhurried.
Peaceful.
There is no pressure. The distance between Argentina and Europe becomes a permanent emotional moat. He decides, quietly, privately, and with absolute finality, that enough is enough. He has given his blood, and he is done.
It's the silent refusal. And that simple, agonizing act of an unanswered phone is the catalyst. It leads us to the first massive historical divergence in our counterfactual analysis.
Which is?
The 2018 FIFA World Cup in Russia.
Okay, let's jump into Russia 2018, because this is where the absence stops being a theoretical concept and starts violently reshaping the reality of international sports.
It really does.
In this alternate timeline, Argentina has to qualify for and travel to the World Cup without him. Now, even in the real timeline, the qualifying cycle for 2018 was an absolute nightmare for Argentina, right?
No, it was incredibly chaotic. In reality, they went through 3 different managers during the qualification phase.
3.
Yeah. Tata Martino, Edgardo Bauza, and finally Jorge Sampaoli. The tactical identity of the team was in complete disarray. They were constantly shifting formations, dropping points against teams they should have easily beaten.
Right.
In our real-time line, they only survived because, in the absolute final qualifying match against Ecuador, played at a staggering high altitude in Quito, where the air is literally thinner and players struggle to breathe, Messi put the team on his back and scored a superhuman hat-trick to drag them to Russia.
Right. So in our alternate timeline, he's back in Barcelona watching that Ecuador game on television.
Exactly.
He's in there to score the hat trick.
No. Now, perhaps the sheer desperation of the squad without him forces someone else to step up in Quito, or perhaps they scrape through the playoffs. For the sake of our timeline, let's assume Argentina manages to barely qualify for Russia 2018, running purely on the fumes of their historical prestige and the panic of their remaining stars.
Okay, so they make it.
But what happens when they actually get to the tournament? You have suddenly taken the greatest player in the world out of the equation, and the entire tactical architecture of the team shatters.
I really want to dig into the tactical side of this because I think people assume you just put another talented guy in that spot and play the same way.
It doesn't work like that.
Right, that's not how elite football works.
Yeah.
You have a squad that is suddenly thrust into a bizarre, terrifying psychological space. You have incredibly talented forwards, guys like Sergio Aguero, Gonzalo Higuain, Angel Di Maria, who have spent their entire international careers operating both tactically and psychologically in his shadow.
Yeah.
Suddenly, that shadow evaporates.
And nature abhors a vacuum. When that shadow vanishes, those players instantly inherit the blinding, scorching spotlight of full responsibility.
No place to hide.
Exactly. And as our analysis notes, international football is completely unspeakably ruthless to transitional squads. Unlike club football, where a manager like Pep Guardiola has his players for 300 days a year to drill highly specific positional play into their heads, an international manager gets his players for maybe 40 days a year.
That's practically no time.
You cannot just flip a switch and build a complex new tactical identity overnight on the world's biggest stage.
The projection for Russia 2018 in this alternate timeline is incredibly grim. Without him serving as the ultimate release valve for pressure, the team implodes under Sampaoli's chaotic management.
It's a disaster.
The prediction is a catastrophic group stage exit. Or, if they're incredibly lucky, they stumble into the round of 16 and are just methodically, clinically dismantled by a well-organized European team like France.
But here's where the analysis gets truly deep. The most devastating consequence of his absence isn't just about Argentina losing matches or failing to score goals. It's about what tactical analysts refer to as the shadow effect.
Okay, let's unpack the shadow effect, because when I first read this concept, I actually didn't believe it. Break down the mechanics of how opposing teams actually defended against him.
To understand the shadow effect, you have to understand the sheer panic he instilled in opposing managers. For over a decade, when teams played Argentina, they didn't just prepare a game plan. They built an entire bespoke defensive architecture entirely around neutralizing one single man.
Just one guy.
Just him. We are talking about utilizing a double pivot in midfield, specifically designed to clog the space he operates in, known as Zone 14.
Right.
We are talking about fullbacks who are explicitly instructed never to cross the halfway line, terrified of leaving space behind them for him to exploit. We are talking about man-marking schemes where a defender follows him, even if he walks over to the sideline to get a drink of water.
So the entire opposing team is playing with this constant, vibrating, underlying tension. Every player has one eye on the ball and one eye on him.
Precisely. Now, what happens in our alternate timeline when he isn't on the pitch? The instinct is to think, well, Argentina has other great players, so the defense will just shift that intense focus to Aguero or Di Maria.
Right, just swap the target.
But they don't, because those players, while world-class, do not possess the reality-bending gravity of Messi.
Here's where it gets really interesting, and this is where I want to introduce an analogy to explain the physics of what you're talking about.
Go for it.
Because it completely flips our standard understanding of how sports strategy works. We naturally think of adding a great player to a team as adding a massive weapon. Ergo, taking that player away must just mean subtracting a weapon.
That's the normal math.
But that's too simplistic. Taking him away doesn't just subtract a weapon, it fundamentally alters the entire physical environment of the match. Think about astrophysics. Think about gravity. Messi was like a supermassive black hole sitting right in the center of a tactical galaxy. The opposing team's entire game plan, their defensive lines, their midfield pressing triggers, their spatial awareness, is forced to orbit around him.
Right, pulling everything in.
They're constantly resisting his gravitational pull, warping their natural shape to avoid being sucked in and destroyed. Now, if you magically remove that supermassive black hole from the center of the galaxy,
The whole system changes.
the opposing team's orbit doesn't crash into chaos. It actually does the opposite.
It stabilizes.
Yes, it stabilizes. The opposing defenses don't collapse in confusion, they relax. They unwarp. They revert to a standard, highly predictable, perfectly manageable 4-4-2 or 4-3-3 shape.
Yeah.
The structural fear is gone. And because that fear is gone, the space on the pitch actually shrinks for all the other Argentine players.
That is a phenomenal way to explain the tactical reality. Let's look at the mechanics of that stabilization. Because the opposing center backs are no longer terrified of Messi receiving the ball and instantly bypassing them, they can push their defensive line 10 yards higher up the pitch.
That squeezes everything.
Exactly. Because the opposing defensive midfielders aren't anchored to tracking his drops into deep spaces, they can press the other Argentine midfielders more aggressively. The opposing team suddenly gets to play their game rather than playing a game dictated entirely by the fear of one man.
Right.
Argentina goes from being this terrifying, wildly unpredictable threat that forces opponents into panic to being just another good team.
Which begs a huge, almost existential question for you as a listener. In the realm of elite performance, is it worth to be feared and violently defeated, or to simply not be feared at all, to just be fundamentally ordinary?
From a legacy standpoint, from the perspective of historical memory, becoming ordinary is the ultimate erasure.
Yeah.
It is far worse to be irrelevant than to be defeated. Imagine the tactical briefing room of an opposing team in this 2018 alternate timeline. The manager is standing in front of a whiteboard. There's a glaring empty space where the number 10 used to be written in red marker.
Just a blank spot.
And the atmosphere in that room isn't triumphant, it's just clinical. It's the eerie, quiet calm of a threat that has simply been neutralized by absence. It's a team going through routine, mundane preparation because they are no longer terrified of being humiliated on global television.
I honestly think that eerie calm is infinitely worse than a blowout loss. A blowout loss means you dared to step into the arena and got destroyed. Eerie calm is the feeling of total irrelevance. It's the feeling that the world has already moved on without you.
Exactly. And while the tactical loss and the inevitable early humiliating exit in Russia in 2018 would be a massive traumatic blow to the nation's pride, the true tragedy of this alternate timeline isn't about the football matches they lose in that specific tournament.
What is it then?
It's about what happens next. It's about the erasure of meaning in the years that followed, culminating in a complete vacuum in 2021.
Okay, let's talk about that gap. We are moving from 2018 to 2021. Now, to appreciate the void of our alternate timeline, we have to look closely at what actually happened in reality.
Right, the real timeline.
In the real timeline, the one we lived through, this period was defined by a massive rebuild under a young, inexperienced manager named Lionel Scaloni. He brought in a new generation of players, guys like Rodrigo de Paul, Emiliano Martinez, Cristian Romero.
The new guard.
And at the center of it all was an aging, bearded, incredibly hungry Messi. He visibly carried the weight of unfinished business. He had evolved from the pure, explosive runner of his youth into this calculating, visionary playmaker.
Yeah, totally different style.
And all of that suffering, all of that rebuilding led directly to the 2021 Copa America, hosted in Brazil.
The real 2021 Copa America was a watershed moment in sports history. Argentina makes it to the final. They're playing their eternal rivals, Brazil, in the Maracanã Stadium in Rio de Janeiro.
Yep.
And this is the exact same stadium where Argentina lost the 2014 World Cup final. The narrative stakes are impossibly high, and Argentina wins 1-0.
Finally.
Angel Di Maria scores a beautiful lobbed goal, but the defining image of that night isn't the goal, it's the final whistle. It's Messi instantly collapsing to his knees, burying his face in his hands, and his entire team sprinting across the pitch to dogpile on top of him. It ended a staggering 28-year national trophy drought for Argentina.
And it happened in the middle of the global pandemic.
Huh?
The stadiums were mostly empty. The historical record describes it so poetically, yet so accurately. A broken man made whole in front of 7,000 fans in a pandemic-emptied stadium.
You could literally hear everything.
You could hear the echoes of the players screaming because there was no crowd to drown them out.
But in our alternate timeline,
Yeah, what happens there?
the timeline where the phone stayed unanswered in Castel de Fels back in 2016, That moment simply vanishes into the ether. It never happens. The timeline is wiped entirely clean of it.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to understand why this specific absence matters so much more than just taking a shiny piece of metal out of the display case in Buenos Aires. Trophies are just metal.
Right.
What was truly lost in that alternate timeline was the emotional inheritance of an entire nation.
That is a perfect term for it, emotional inheritance. In Argentina, football isn't just a sport, it is the primary cultural language. It is how generations relate to one another.
Yeah.
Fathers tell their children about watching Diego Maradona in 1986. The document explicitly points out that without that 2021 Copa America win, an entire generation of Argentine kids born after 1993, are robbed of their very first memory of national triumph.
That's the brutal collateral damage of his 2016 retirement.
Yeah.
It's not just his story that ends in failure. It's the joy of millions of kids who would never get to see their country win anything of substance.
It's heartbreaking.
Think about a visual for this. Picture a kid, maybe 8 or 10 years old, standing on a concrete ledge in a city plaza in Rosario or Buenos Aires, wearing an oversized replica jersey. In reality, that kid was out in the streets in 2021, banging pots and pans, radiating pure, unguarded, hysterical joy.
Absolute magic.
That joy is the ultimate contrast to the agonizing weariness we saw in the locker room 5 years earlier. But in the alternate timeline, that plaza is empty.
Nothing happens.
That kid just watches his team get knocked out in the quarterfinals by Colombia or Uruguay,
Yeah.
turns off the TV, and goes to bed disappointed.
Okay.
Again, the generational trauma just continues to pass down.
And we also have to critically analyze how the complete erasure of 2021 structurally undermines the architecture of what happened in 2022. We all know the reality of the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. It is widely considered one of the greatest sporting events ever broadcast.
Unbelievable drama. The opening shock loss to Saudi Arabia, the tense, venomous quarterfinal against the Netherlands, the Kemiras Bobo moment, and then the final against France. A match that literally had people's heart rates spiking to dangerous levels. Going up 2-0, Mbappe tying it up with 2 goals in 2 minutes.
Yes.
Messi scoring in extra time, Mbappe tying it again with a penalty, and finally, Argentina winning the shootout.
It was a masterpiece of tension. But here is the critical analytical point. Without the 2016 walkaway, without the grueling years of doubt, the brutal return, the agonizing failures in 2018, and the cathartic drought-ending triumph in 2021, a 2022 World Cup win by anyone is just a highly successful sports campaign.
Wait, explain that distinction. A campaign versus what?
A team plays well, they string together 7 good matches, they win a tournament. That is a campaign. Spain in 2010 was a campaign. Germany in 2014 was a campaign.
Okay, I see.
But with that agonizing, highly public 6-year context of failure, quitting, returning, and suffering, the Qatar victory was fundamentally elevated from a successful campaign to a coronation.
A coronation. I really love that specific word choice. It implies so much more than just winning. A coronation implies inevitability. It implies royalty. But most importantly, it implies a destiny that has finally been fulfilled after a period of exile.
Exactly.
It's the aesthetic contrast between the two timelines that really strikes me when thinking about this. The alternate timeline, the one where he quits in 2016 and stays gone, is drenched in this cold, clinical, cerulean blue.
Very harsh.
It's defined by deep shadows, tactical emptiness, isolation, and quiet, unanswered phones. But the real timeline, the Qatar coronation, is bathed in this warm, overwhelming parchment gold. The gold of the trophy, the gold of the ceremonial bish they draped over his shoulders, the gold of the stadium lights in the desert.
It's the visual representation of unresolved grief versus ultimate resolution. The cold blue floodlights of the New Jersey Stadium reflecting off the confetti versus the warm gold stadium lights in Doha reflecting off the World Cup trophy.
But this raises a really fascinating underlying structural question about how we, as human beings, actually experience narratives. And this applies to everything, not just sports. Doesn't a triumphant ending actually need an almost catastrophic failure to mean anything?
Oh, without a doubt.
Think about the structure of any great movie, right?
Yeah.
Think about the classic hero's journey framework. If the hero of the story never faces the dark night of the soul, if they just breeze through the obstacles.
It's boring.
Exactly. If they never legitimately, completely consider giving up when everything seems utterly lost, we, as the audience, don't actually care when they eventually win.
Yeah.
The victory feels cheap. It feels unearned.
Totally.
The gold in Qatar only looks so incredibly warm because we had to sit shivering in the freezing blue light of New Jersey for 6 years to get there.
You've just hit on the absolute core philosophy of this entire historical analysis. It's the ultimate lesson of what his 2016 decision, and crucially, the eventual reversal of that decision, actually teaches us about the true nature of greatness.
Let's focus on that philosophy, because there is a specific phrasing in the historical record that is just an absolute gut punch. It summarizes this entire deep dive perfectly. The difference between legend and footnote is sometimes just a few months of silence.
A few months of silence. That is the razor-thin, terrifying margin we're talking about. Think about how close he came to being a footnote in the history of the World Cup, rather than its defining legend.
Inches away.
The analysis we are working from actively challenges the conventional wisdom we hold about elite performers. We tend to mythologize greatness as this uninterrupted, upward, straight line of supreme confidence. We like to think that Michael Jordan or Serena Williams or Lionel Messi never actually doubt themselves.
We want them to be superheroes.
We want them to be machines. But the profound argument here is the exact opposite.
Right, because if they are machines, we can't relate to them.
Exactly. The greatest careers in human history are not the ones devoid of doubt. A career without doubt isn't human. The truly transcendent careers, the ones that shift culture and redefine what is possible, are the ones where doubt was entertained fully, seriously, looked right in the eye, and then eventually overcome.
That word fully is such a vital distinction, entertaining the doubt fully. He didn't just have a fleeting thought of quitting while sitting on his couch.
No.
He didn't just whisper it to his wife in a moment of frustration. He stood in a stadium in front of the world's media, in front of millions of people watching live, and he meant every single syllable he said. He fully crossed the psychological threshold into retirement. He stepped into the void.
And that absolute surrender to the doubt is exactly what makes the eventual return so incredibly powerful. Imagine a physical space representing his mind during those few months of silence in Barcelona. It's a long, empty stadium corridor. One end is bright daylight, representing the pitch, the pressure, the continuing story. The other end is total darkness, representing retirement, safety, and the end of the narrative. In 2016, he walked all the way into the darkness.
But then, something pulled him back.
Right. But the change of mind wasn't some grand, cinematic public spectacle. There was no dramatic press conference to announce his return. It was a quiet, personal, almost invisible recalibration of his own internal limits.
Right. It was private.
He realized that the pain of not trying was eventually going to outweigh the pain of failing again. And that quiet realization became the hinge on which the entire history of the sport turned.
So what does this all mean for you? For the person listening to this exact conversation right now, driving in your car or making coffee or sitting at your desk, we are constantly bombarded by our culture, our bosses, our social media, with the messaging that quitting is the ultimate sign of failure.
Yeah, that's everywhere.
If you quit that job, if you walk away from that project, you're weak. You didn't have the grit. But what this incredible counterfactual timeline argues so beautifully is that stepping right up to the edge of the abyss, genuinely looking down into it, accepting the very real, very rational logic of walking away to save yourself.
Yes.
And then, after sitting with that silence, choosing to turn your back on the exit door and walk back into the fire, that is what actually forges a legend.
Exactly.
The very fact that he almost didn't come back, the fact that this alternate timeline was inches away from being our reality, is the very thing that makes his return and his ultimate victory a masterpiece. The cracks in the porcelain are what make the bowl beautiful.
And looking at history through the lens of what didn't happen, which is what this entire counterfactual exercise forces us to do, leaves you with this immense, profound sense of gratitude. And gratitude for the timeline we actually get to live in. We get to live in the reality where the story was finished.
It's a heavy, incredible journey we've just been on today. We started in the very real, very legitimate, suffocating grief of a locker room in New Jersey. We felt the logic of quitting.
We did.
We walked down the cold, quiet path of an unanswered phone in a house in Barcelona. We stepped inside the eerie calm of tactical rooms where opponents no longer feared playing Argentina. We watched a World Cup in Russia just fizzle out into irrelevance.
Erasure.
We felt the profound, generational loss of a 28-year, drought-ending triumph that never happened, and the hollow echo of a 2022 World Cup that was just another tournament, never a coronation. We saw exactly what absence really looks like.
And if there is a final thought I can leave you with today, a takeaway from this deep exploration of doubt and greatness, it's this.
Please do.
If the ultimate test of a legend is the ability to overcome profound existential doubt, then perhaps the greatest adversary Any elite performer, or anyone listening to this, in whatever field you operate in ever faces, isn't the opponent standing across the pitch.
Right.
It isn't the competitor across the negotiating table. The greatest opponent you will ever face is the perfectly rational, entirely logical voice inside your own head, calmly telling you that you have done enough and that it is finally okay to stop suffering. Beating that voice is the real victory.
That is an incredibly profound way to look at it. Which brings us right back to the beginning. The empty stadium, the blue light, the confetti on the turf, the microphone, the door slamming shut. I want you to ask yourself, if that door had never reopened, if he had listened to that completely rational voice and stayed retired in 2016, does his career still belong in the conversation for the greatest of all time?
That's the question.
Or does the story inherently require the ending it finally got, the agony and the goal, to make sense of the suffering? Think about that the next time you find yourself standing at the edge of walking away from something that matters to you. What timeline are you going to choose? Thank you for exploring the dark with us today.